I'd like to start by sharing a comment I got on a recent video. Tightly packed sandbags are like vanity sizing for jeans. You're fooling yourself by lifting them, and they're basically useless, easier than a barbell. If you want real sandbag strength, you need to lift floppy sandbags like the old dock workers did. Well, first, clearly the commenter has never actually tried lifting a modern strongman sandbag, but I'm glad he stopped by because the message is a pretty good representation of the mindset many people seem to have. This comment sheds light on what's probably the biggest divide in the sandbag lifting community. Should sandbags be underfilled so the sand moves around on you, or are modern tightly packed bags best? Before sharing my thoughts, let me make an argument for each side. Starting with the floppy sandbags are the only sandbags side of things, I can see where these guys are coming from. The idea of fighting an object that moves like a live opponent is just awesome, and there's lots of motivation to be had about it from thoughts of the past. The idea of old-time dock workers out there building their brute, tavern brawl-winning strength by throwing floppy bags of whatever onto their shoulders and carrying them around all day is just cool. It's that old-time labor strength, the strength of someone who depended on physical toughness to make it through each day and earn his pay. You can picture old strongmen throwing around heavy bags made out of whatever they could put together, or even more modern strongmen like author of Dinosaur Training Brooks Kubik and the ridiculous sandbags he pressed overhead, basically just the most awkward objects imaginable. Thinking of the past is exciting, and while I am completely against the idea that the old-timers knew best and we've lost our way, as well as the idea that new is better because we're somehow smarter now, I can't help but get amped up to go train when I think about a time period where strength mattered at least as much as everything else. It's certainly more exciting than thoughts of modern-day spandex-wearing sandbag Instagram models. The main argument for this side is floppy sandbags move on you, which makes lifting them a fight. It's the idea that every lift is different, and that the only way to master these awkward objects is through straight-up grit and drive. People on this side argue that's the whole point of sandbags, trying to beat down an uncooperative bag of sand like it's a living person. There is merit to that, definitely. Now let's cover the other side. Actually, I don't think I've ever heard anyone try to make an argument for lifting tightly packed bags over underfilled. Maybe the people who lift them just don't care, or just aren't aware sandbags haven't always been like they are now. I guess I'll make my own argument. First, a simple question. Does stone lifting make you strong? Of course it does. No one is going to argue that natural stones or atlas stones don't give you top-tier strength. That's essentially all modern, tightly packed sandbags are, man-made stones. Talk about motivation from the past. Old-time strongmen from around the year 1900? Nah, natural stones take you back way past that. Dock workers, men used to earn their spots on fishing boats by lifting stones. Before that, the strength to lift a stone earned you your place as a man. Further still, way back, and you have ancient Greek legends building their strength by lifting stones. And beyond that, who can say? Stone lifting has probably had a place forever. Natural stones and tightly packed sandbags aren't exactly the same, and stones offer more variety, but they are pretty close. Of course, tightly packed sandbags build strength. Another argument I can make is weight. You can lift much heavier when using a tightly packed bag, and more out of less weight and everything else aside, there's simply no denying the effect heavy weight has on the body. Bear hugging a tightly packed 300 is a completely different experience compared with a floppy 150. And there in that sentence is the word I want to focus on: different. First, I should say, while I'm by no means the strongest person around, I have spent a lot of time with both kinds of sandbags, and I do have a solid understanding of how it feels lifting them. These are just my opinions though, of course. I should also say I've lifted both homemade floppy sandbags and modern manufactured sandbags that were underfilled, and I did not notice a significant difference between them. I say this because I know someone will make the argument that an underfilled strongman sandbag isn't the same as one made out of a random canvas bag or duffel bag or something, but that's just false. They feel exactly the same. And if you say otherwise, I'm guessing you really just don't like underfilled strongman bags because they're modern, and that's fine. Just know your preference doesn't change the truth. So, different. To me, that really sums this whole thing up. At the end of the day, saying either one is better than the other is completely missing the point. Is a barbell better than a dumbbell? Is an atlas stone better than a natural stone? Of course not. They're all good, they're just different things. That's floppy sandbags and tightly packed bags. To me, they represent completely different training tools. Lifting a tightly packed sandbag off the ground is a different exercise than lifting a floppy bag off the ground. Shouldering each is a completely different experience, as is carrying them around. Really, this is great news because that means variety, and more variety means more potential for becoming a well-rounded lifter. These things in mind, I'd like to shift the focus from this versus that to this and that. Both are good, and there's no point in trying to decide which is better. Instead, let's discuss what each one does best. While both have the potential to build the strength of each, when I think about these two training tools, what comes to mind is a scrapper and a defensive lineman. The underfilled sandbag builds that scrapper strength, the strength of an unrelenting fighter. This one places a greater emphasis on the strength endurance of the hands, arms, and upper back, and develops the will to keep fighting for a long time. The tightly packed bag is about building tremendous total body strength and learning to absorb heavy incoming forces, like an American football lineman whose job is tackling people all day. Like I said, both types of sandbags can get you to either place, and these descriptions are just what comes to mind when I think about them. Something to keep in mind as we move forward. So, starting with the basic lift from the ground to the lap, when done in the typical way with an open hand grip, the tightly packed bag is much more challenging and offers more variety. Because a tightly packed bag keeps its shape, you'll be forced to handle the entire weight of it from the moment you begin the lift. This means you'll need a lot of strength in that completely bent over position. It also means the exercise builds incredible posterior chain strength. The lower back and hamstrings in particular really grow from the exercise. Lifting a tightly packed bag off the ground is like trying to deadlift an axle bar. The bar has zero give, whereas lifting an underfilled sandbag is more like lifting a specialty deadlift bar with the maximum amount of whip. With an underfilled sandbag, your hands might raise a full half a foot off the ground before you feel the full weight of the bag, which gives you a huge leverage advantage. Going back to variety, you'll likely have more options with a tightly packed bag too, mainly just because it will almost always be bigger than a floppy sandbag because you can load it heavier. Where the underfilled bag just kind of lays there, the tightly packed bag can be lifted off the ground from a vertical or horizontal position, as well as with a bear hug grip from a standing position. That last one is a very unique exercise and one of my personal favorites. This doesn't mean the underfilled bag is inferior though. First, if the lift from the ground is a weak point for you, and you have trouble pushing the weight with other exercises because it always holds you back, the floppy sandbag can really help by letting you skip over that weakness. Also, keep in mind, I said this is all when lifting with the typical open hand position. If you really want to increase the challenge, you might try actually grabbing onto the bag, gripping the material in your fists. That's a movement completely unique to lifting underfilled sandbags. And imagine the grip and arm strength of someone who does that regularly. Again, there's that scrapper strength. How about the lift from the lap to the chest? Here's where the difference between the two training tools really starts to show through. When you have a tightly packed bag on your lap, everything is about wrapping your body around it. If you want to move that huge, solid mass of sand, you'll need to get every muscle in your body involved. When lifting straight up in one motion using the strength technique, which is almost like a front squat, things are pretty straightforward. Just stand up with the bag and you're done. Simple, but not easy. It takes tremendous strength to do this, the coordinated effort of every muscle in your body. The powerlifting techniques are where the idea of absorbing incoming forces comes into play. When you throw a sandbag up from your lap to your chest, it will try to fold you in half as it lands. It will take every bit of core strength you have to control the weight. The tightly packed bag is harsh and unforgiving in this way. You'll feel every pound of weight crashing into you as you catch it. If you ever spent some time lifting only floppy sandbags, then went back to tightly packed, you'll know what I mean. It's like the sandbag tries to break you down, to collapse your brace and crush you. Absorbing incoming force and using the entire body as one unyielding mass of muscle and bone. That's the tightly packed lap to chest lift. Now for the underfilled sandbag. With this one, you'll start to notice what makes these things so challenging before you even begin. After lifting it from the ground, it's likely the bag will already be completely bent out of shape on your lap. Before you can even attempt to lift it to your chest, you'll have to put it back into a usable shape, pushing and pulling with all your strength. This just destroys the arms and will probably leave you out of breath, all before even starting the actual lift. After that, if you use the strength technique, lifting straight up, you should move it to your chest without much trouble because the weight will likely be lighter than you could use with a tightly packed bag, and you won't need to reach your arms as far around it. In this way, the exercise is definitely easier than lifting a tightly packed bag. If you toss it up to your chest with a power technique though, you'll notice two things. One, you likely won't manage to throw the sandbag even half the distance you could if it was tightly packed because the sand absorbs all of the power you put into it. The sandbag saps your strength from the start. Throwing an underfilled sandbag is like trying to jump on loose sand. The second thing you'll notice is catching the weight actually feels a lot less harsh than it does with a tightly packed bag. Because the sand forms itself to the shape of your body as it lands, it doesn't take nearly as much total body tension to absorb the force of it. The hard part here is, again, the sandbag will end up out of shape, and you'll have to work with that. And of course, because you couldn't bring it as high from the lap, it will take more heaves to continue throwing it up higher if you wish to do so. Again, like that savage fighter who just keeps going, blow after blow. Now let's cover the bear hug carry. With a tightly packed bag, breathing is everything. With that bag pressed up against your chest, breathing is a real struggle. It will take every bit of core and back strength you have to maintain that bear hug position, and you'll likely end up winded almost instantly. Every second spent carrying a tightly packed bag is like a fight for survival. Underfilled sandbags might specialize in teaching you to push through fatigue, but there's no denying carrying a massive, tightly packed bag against the chest does too. Assuming the sandbag is wide enough, this exercise is also one of the best of all time for building the upper back. With your shoulders reached completely forward and your arms wrapped all the way around the bag, there's an intense weighted stretch effect. It builds a lot of muscle. The underfilled bag is different. At first, it will likely feel much easier to carry. The bag doesn't constrict breathing as much, and you won't have to wrap your body as far around it. As the carry progresses, though, you will begin to experience the true sinister nature of the floppy sandbag bear hug carry. One step might not shift the sand much. 5 might not either, but as you continue on, those steps add up, and eventually the sand will start fighting you, shifting into the most awkward shapes imaginable. The carry becomes a constant battle between you and the sandbag, your arms and upper back working together to move the weight back into a manageable shape as it continues shifting as if it's somehow alive, all while forcing yourself to continue taking that next step. It's tough, to say the least. In addition to building the arms, like the tightly packed bear hug carry, this exercise also really works the upper back hard, and in a pretty unique way. Now let's talk about the sandbag to shoulder. This is the big one. Shouldering a tightly packed bag is often as much about skill as it is raw strength, which is part of what makes it so enjoyable. When you become a technical master with your preferred style, and you learn to throw that sandbag around with precision and grace, the movement becomes like an Olympic lift. Technical mastery is possible here. There are many ways to shoulder a tightly packed bag, and some do rely on brute strength above all else, but there's no denying the potential the exercise has for expression. When something's predictable and behaves how you expect it to, you have the opportunity to practice, to learn your technique and refine your skill, and a tightly packed sandbag is just that, predictable. Underfilled sandbag purists say this is a bad thing, but I couldn't disagree more. Is Olympic lifting bad because a barbell doesn't shift on you as you lift it? Of course not. Again, it's just a different thing. The tightly packed sandbag to shoulder is like that. It's as much sport as it is exercise. It's just straight up fun. It's like playing a game or solving a puzzle. How much rotation should I use when moving from each different position on the chest? How high should I bring the bag before moving it off center towards one shoulder? There's endless room for experimentation with the tightly packed sandbag to shoulder. It's the best. Now let's look at the underfilled version, where the tightly packed bag was like an Olympic lift, or even a power lift, depending on how you do it. This one's like a bare-knuckle cage fight. It's battle in exercise form. Assuming the sandbag is heavy enough, it will probably take a long time to shoulder, and you'll feel every second of the struggle as if it were magnified through glass. You start by trying to lift the sandbag all the way to your shoulder in one go from your lap, but as you do, the sand shifts and somehow the bag only makes it halfway up your stomach. Not good. To make things worse, as the sandbag lands, it also ends up completely bent out of shape. It's at this point, there's a good chance you'll think something like, maybe I should go back to the tightly packed sandbag. This is where the true battle begins. Inch by inch, you'll move that bag higher. Every bit of distance gained takes every bit of strength you have, every bit of power you possess. You'll want to quit, but you can't. All you can do is keep going. The exercise is unrelenting, and it's never the same. Because the sand never behaves how you expect it to, every shoulder attempt is new. Each position of the sandbag on the way to the shoulder, and each unique contorted shape of the floppy weight is like a new challenge, and with an underfilled bag, you'll likely experience every one of 1,000 different positions as you work with it. Where the tightly packed sandbag to shoulder is like art and playing defensive lineman both, the underfilled bag is crawling through a pit of mud while fighting off an attacker. They're both good, they both carry over well to each other and build a lot of strength and muscle, but they are very different. Last but not least, let's talk about shoulder carries. With a tightly packed bag on your shoulder, the weight almost feels aggressive, like it wants to crush you. You feel the impact of the sandbag running sharp through your body with every step, and if your core isn't completely braced, it will take you down. It's one constant max effort duel between you and the bag. This one builds insane core strength above all else. Now for the underfilled bag. This is quickly becoming one of my favorite exercises ever. Where the tightly packed shoulder carry was rough and unforgiving, one misstep and you're done, the underfilled shoulder carry is like a slow and steady battle of wills. As it reaches your shoulder, the sandbag splays out and covers more surface area on your body than a tightly packed bag would, making it at the same time both more and less comfortable. The shifting sand feels less harsh, but it also takes more work to manage and causes more muscle to engage. As the sand shifts, your arms, lats, and upper back must all work together to keep the sandbag from falling. The exercise is a slow burn, every step a new obstacle for you to overcome. This one works the upper back, lats, shoulders, and arms in a way that's hard to replicate elsewhere. I highly recommend it. There are many other things you can do with both kinds of sandbags: presses, rows, squats, and with an underfilled bag you might incorporate specialty twisting moves if it's light enough, but I think the basics, ground to lap, lap to chest, carry, and the shoulder are enough to paint the picture. So I hope this helped settle the debate, if only in a small way. Floppy or tightly packed, I say use both. Both offer unique challenges and there's strength to be gained by overcoming them all. If you currently use just one style, I highly recommend finding a way to incorporate the other too. If you want a well-made floppy sandbag, you might consider buying a fixed-weight strongman style bag and filling it to somewhere around 50 to 75% capacity. Of course, if you want something that moves on you, you can also just make a homemade sandbag. It's cheap to do and at least as effective as anything else for this purpose. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.